Hey guys, welcome to Motoroids, the channel where we try to give you the no-nonsense, in-depth review of all the available cars and motorcycles in the Indian market. My name is Amit and this motorcycle here is the Triumph Speed 400, which has been creating all the waves in the Indian motorcycle market owing to the fantastic value for money proposition that it has provided. Now there have been a sea of walkarounds of this motorcycle, including one on Motoroids. Today I rode this motorcycle all the way from Khopoli to Bajaj's Chakan plant, which is this place, and here we are at Bajaj's test track. I rode it around the test track as well, and I am going to start off with the performance because that's one part which everybody wants to know right now. And let's get done with the numbers first. The peak power here is produced at 8000 rpm, 40 ps, 37.5 newton meters of peak torque, which is produced at over 6000 rpm, but 80% of it, which is about 30 newton meters, is available from 3000 rpm, which really gives it a lot of tractability lower down the rev range. However, this is not just a cruiser, this is a roadster, and unlike a lot of other motorcycles in the segment like the classic 350 or the recently launched Harley Davidson 440X, this motorcycle is not just meant for cruising, it's also meant for some spirited riding around the track or on the street. And in that sense, this definitely feels more sprightly, more alive. It does have more power, it has better acceleration, it feels nimbler, and it's easier to drop down and pick up as well. And I have ridden it in a variety of conditions. I think I'm ready to talk to you about all that is there to be known about this motorcycle. So let's straight away talk about some numbers. And 0 to 60 is taken care of in sub 3 seconds, 0 to 100 comes up in 7 seconds. The claimed top speed, the real top speed, is 145 kilometers per hour, but as I tested on the track, on the speedo, you will be able to see 160 kilometers per hour on the speedo, which is one of the best in the segment. Now, about the speeds, in every gear I checked the speeds, and in the first gear you'll be able to see 50 kilometers per hour, in the second gear 75 kilometers per hour, third gear will take you to 100 kilometers per hour, fourth gear will take you to 120 kilometers per hour, fifth gear 150 kilometers per hour, and as I mentioned, the sixth gear will take you to 160 kilometers per hour. The one thing that I really wanted to mention is that the tacho here is very difficult to read, and the markings, as you can see here, are not just very small, but the points that are pointing towards a number, these spikes, they are very confusing. And since the bars are operating at such a small margin, it's sometimes very difficult to figure whether you're at 4000 or 5000 or 6000. So in that sense, I think the readability of the tacho could have been a little bit better. But from what I understood, in 6th gear 100 comes up at about 5000 rpm, and knowing that this motorcycle limits at 9000 rpm, you have 4000 more clicks to go with. 120 comes up at 7000 rpm, so you still have 3000 more clicks to go with. So cruising at 120, 125 all day long on this motorcycle is not going to be much of a problem. It's a very quick motorcycle. On the street also it feels very quick, and while it is very planted, the front gets 100 section tire, the rear gets 150 section tire, so it does feel very planted. The weight distribution is 50-50. However, the front feels a little bit more nervous than some of the more front biased motorcycles like say the KTM RC390, and in that sense it's not as aggressively front biased as some of the other sportier motorcycle. So the front does, especially around a track like this where you really want to lean the motorcycle and pick it up again, it does feel slightly lighter than ideal for a sports machine. Now, in terms of fuel efficiency, the ballpark number that you'll get with a mix of city and highway riding is about 30, and if you're riding it gingerly at about 100 on a highway, you'll get about 35 kmpl. That's the max number. The lower number will be about 25. It can drop further if you're riding it very hard, so you can see about 20, 21 also if you're going up a hill or if you're going to be riding it very hard. But it's a respectable number, and the fuel efficiency, for those of you who want to buy it and want it to be easy on your pocket, the fuel efficiency is not going to be much of a concern. Now, that was about the performance in terms of the sheer numbers. In terms of how it feels, we'll start off by understanding how heavy it is, and this is one of the lightest motorcycles within the segment with the kind of power that it produces, the kind of torque it has, the kind of acceleration it has, and the kind of segment, the neo-retro kind of a segment that it represents. This is one of the lightest motorcycles out there. 176 kgs of weight, and this weight is more than the international version, and the reason why That is so is because of the crash guard, because of the grab rail, because of a different variety of tires. There you have Pirellis and Metzger's. Here you have Apollo and MRF, which have been custom developed for this motorcycle. So the tires are also slightly on the heavier sides, and the wheels here are also sturdier to take on the abuse that the roads in this part of the world throw at us. So the overall weight is slightly higher. We also have the sari guard here. So 6 kgs is not all that much of a compromise, I think, and this still has the highest power to weight ratio in its class. It really feels like it's the quickest bike in its class. Now, it's not a kind of experience that you have not seen before. Well, from the same stables, like, Bajaj has partnered with Triumph for this motorcycle. Similarly, they have partnered with KTM for the KTM RC390, and there you have even better performance, more power. It's lighter. Around the track, it feels more sprightly, it's more planted, it's sharper. However, among the neo-retro kind of motorcycles, I think this is a unique experience. At this price point though, you would probably have had even a better experience if you're a sporty rider. But if you want a more versatile motorcycle, something which comes with a bit of legacy, has a more retro kind of styling, has a more roadsterish, scramble-ish kind of look, then this motorcycle is definitely the quickest among its peers. So in that sense, this is really quick. Seat height of 790 mm means that the shorter ones amongst you can also seat on this very, very quickly. Not just that, the seat tapers towards the front also. It's narrow, so that really helps. And myself being about 5 feet 10, I can really plant my heels onto the ground very, very easily. So you can see that there is a bend also at my knees. So the shorter ones amongst you who are 5 feet 5, 5 feet 6, even those from the fairer sex should not have a problem riding this motorcycle. So that's one important thing about the stance of the motorcycle. And as you can see, the foot pegs are slightly rear set. They're not very aggressive, but they're slightly rear set. And what I can tell you is that I recently rode the Harley 450X, and that motorcycle has slightly forward set foot pegs. They also jut out a little bit more, so it's easy to dig them into the tarmac, especially when you're around a track. But not this motorcycle. This one handles corners much, much better. So in that sense, it's a sportier motorcycle. You can ride it more enthusiastically, and the handlebar position is somewhat similar. This is also a straight handlebar. You ride in an open-chested kind of a manner, although the feeling on the Harley is a little bit more open-chested. Here you do get some weight on your wrists, which I like a little bit more than riding it completely straight. So this is a very nice, well-balanced kind of riding position. It's not too aggressive. It's not completely commuterish. So in that sense, it's a nice, balanced kind of riding position that you get. And on the road, you do feel very, very comfortable. If you're going for a long ride, you will not feel exhausted. The cushioning on the seat is very good. The quality on the motorcycle overall is very, very good. I'll come to that in a bit. But the seating position here is quite comfortable, and you can take it to long rides without any problem. And in that sense, it offers a very good balance between a motorcycle which is really good on the straight highways and offers good control on track as well. Now, coming to the handling, there are a few things that I want to share with you. First, the tires are generally very, very good. You have a 100 section steel radial, up front 17-inch wheel. At the rear, you have a 150 section tire. Again, steel radial. You have a mix of MRFs and Apollos. Both are supposed to be exactly the same in terms of the performance that they provide. The grip generally is very good in dry conditions. As you can see, it's overcast. It showered for a little bit. The track got ever so lightly wet, and immediately I could feel that the tires were slithering around a little bit. So you have to be careful, because the brakes on this motorcycle, 300 mm up front, and even with ABS both up front and at the rear, the brakes are sharp. And by that I mean that they are not progressive. They come in really quickly. So the moment you press the lever, they come in, they have a very sharp bite, and they have a tendency to stop the bike very, very quickly. So you cannot really modulate the brakes very well. There is very little progression, and the brakes are really sharp, and thanks to the tires, they don't get outdone. But if it's wet, the brakes can sometimes overpower the tires, so you have to be careful about that. Now, about the handling part, generally on the streets around the ghats, this handles very well. There is a very, very clear difference when you compare it with other motorcycles, like say the Harley 440X or the Classic 350, or even the Highness or the CB 350R. All of these motorcycles are essentially high torque, low revving motorcycles. This motorcycle is high revving. This feels nimbler. It definitely feels easier to put down, pick up. It feels more intent to rev. Around the corners, you can definitely go faster. It does feel like it lends itself to sporty riding a lot better, and it feels completely at ease if you are around the ghats, even for a track like this, for which it's not entirely built. The RC390 is more of a motorcycle which is built for that purpose, but this motorcycle also does pretty well. However, you can feel the difference. The front, as I mentioned, feels slightly lighter, it feels slightly more nervous, and you are ever so more careful in putting it down more aggressively. In terms of revs, this motorcycle doesn't mind revving all the way up to 7,500, 8,000 RPM where the peak power is produced. It does rev. The tractability is fantastic, and in terms of its speeds, where you can really ride it in higher gears. In the 6th gear, you can ride it from 45 kilometers per hour. In the 5th gear, you can ride it from 35 kilometers per hour. In the 4th gear, from 30 kilometers per hour. And in the 3rd gear, you can ride it at 20 kilometers per hour. So it is indeed very, very tractable. If I have to put things in perspective, I would say the classic 350 is slightly more tractable than this, and even the Harley is slightly more tractable, but this motorcycle is also very, very tractable. Apart from that, the power starts getting produced after 2000 RPM. That's where the knocking stops, and from there on it starts building power. But it's really after 4,500 RPM all the way up to 7,500, 8,000 RPM where you really like keeping this bike at. It really comes into its own around the mid-range at about 4,500, 5,000 RPM onwards. It really feels like a motorcycle that it's meant to be. It really likes being in the mid-range. That's where you really enjoy this motorcycle. Lower down the rev range, it doesn't feel as nice. I'm not saying it's uncomfortable, but it really feels nice when it's between 4.5 to 6.5, 7,000 RPM. Is it completely vibe free? Well, I would say that it's not entirely vibe free. There are minor vibrations which start creeping in from 4.5, 5,000 RPM. There are some vibrations to be felt on the foot pegs, on the seat as well, but they are very, very minor, and they get more pronounced only when you reach at about 7,500 RPM. But there are some vibes. It's not an entirely vibe free motorcycle. There are some vibes. To put things in perspective, I would say it's at par with the Harley, which has almost negligible vibrations, but maybe slightly more towards the higher end of the rev range. So there are some vibes. It's not entirely vibe free. So overall, a very good motorcycle to ride. It feels very energetic. It is very intent to rev, and it's in the mid revs where it really wants to lunge forward. It has this tendency to accelerate very, very quickly. The throttle response is very good. It comes with the ride-by-wire technology, so the throttle response is very good. Fuel injection by Bosch works really, really beautifully. And overall, around the bumps or around bad surfaces, the suspension is also very well set up. So you have a 43 mm upside down fork big piston unit, and it's made by Endurance Systems, and it's very nicely set up. The wheels feel sturdy. The brakes, as I mentioned, are very powerful. They could have had more progression to them. They come mated with a 4-pot radially mounted caliper, and it really does its job. The rear suspension also is a monoshock unit, unlike the Harley, which comes with a twin shock setup, and right now it's at its stiffest, but still it's beautifully set up, and I did not have any problems. I'm not feeling uncomfortable at all. So very, very nicely set up suspension as well. A very good balance between a sporty ride and good comfort on the road. So you have 10 steps of preload which you can adjust, and depending on how much load you're carrying, you can change the kind of feel that you get from the suspension. Now, a very important part of this entire setup is the all new chassis, which is essentially a perimeter frame. Triumph is for some reason calling it a hybrid tubular spine slash perimeter frame, but it does have a perimeter. It's not visible from here, but it goes like this and comes down like this here, and there is a loop here which ends into the engine, and the engine is a stressed member. And overall, the chassis feels very, very rigid, and there is absolutely no problem whatsoever in terms of the kind of abuse that this motorcycle can take while you're taking it around corners. It also comes with a bolt-on subframe, which you can see here. But the other important and high quality bit that you have here is this cast aluminum twin swing arm, which is fantastic. It's a very high quality bit, and for a motorcycle which is not very expensive, I really believe that they have done a very good job. Now, talking about quality, attention to detail and quality is something that this motorcycle really boasts, and be it the front forks, be it the finish on this engine, even if you talk about these bolts here, these beautifully finished fins, or the exhaust which has been hydroformed, there are absolutely no weld marks. Even on the chassis, the weld marks are absolutely minimal. And of all the motorcycles in this segment, the finish is absolutely top notch, the quality is top notch, and we have to give it to Triumph for coming up with such a beautiful motorcycle at such a great price, which is so beautifully finished. The paint quality is also amazing. By the way, you get three colors. This one is the red, you have a blue, and you have a black. 13 liters of fuel tank capacity, and with an average of about 30 kmpl, you would get about 400 kilometers of range. So that's not too bad, not too high either, but I think about 300 kilometers where you want to take a break. Now let's have a look at the switch gear as well, and the quality here is also top notch. But before I get there, these bar end mounted RVMs is something that I totally loved. Now typically you'll have restricted rear view visibility with these kind of mirrors, but here these work fantastically well. The view of what you have left behind is fantastic. Whatever is following you is very clearly visible, so really like these mirrors. Then apart from that, you don't have adjustable levers. However, the clutch action is very light. It comes with a slipper clutch, so it's a torque assist clutch, and the clutch action is very light. Even while you're riding into the city, it's not going to bother you at all. So the clutch action is light, and that really helps. The engine doesn't heat up, so that again is a fantastic thing. I have ridden it for long enough around the track as well, and since it's a liquid cooled engine, the problems that you generally get with heating on air cooled engines is not there. Anyway, coming back to the instrument console, you have this analog digital kind of a combo, and here you have the speedo and all the telltale lights, including the traction control light. Yes, it comes with traction control, and this button here is something that you can control whether you want to switch it on or off with. Now, as I mentioned, the tacho is really tacky. It should have been better. It should have been better laid out. The visibility is bad. I cannot really figure out as to what revs I'm doing. You have a gear indicator. You have the engine off indicator right now. The fuel tank is here. Now you have to turn the throttle off to turn the traction control on or off. Let me just show you. So this is trip 1, this is trip 2. You get the instantaneous fuel efficiency, average fuel efficiency. You also get your distance to dry. Now right now the traction control is on, and if you long press this button and the throttle is completely off, now it's off. So you have to have the throttle in the closed position, and you have to long press this button to turn traction control off. This unit does not come with Bluetooth connectivity, so if you want to connect your phone, the only option is to charge it, and for that you have a USB socket here. This here is the key, and it's a very nicely finished key. They have not skimped on the key quality as well, and the key, just like the rest of the motorcycle, is really beautifully built. And this handlebar here is also very well finished. The switchgear quality is fantastic. You have the engine on and off, or the engine kill switch here. You have a hazard light button here. This is the ignition, and this is the pilot lamp, and this is the low beam. You want to go to high beam, you use this as a day flasher, and otherwise you'll have the pilot lamp on. So it's a little bit confusing, but it has the pilot lamp and DRL, which generally is not the case with a lot of other motorcycles. There you have the high beam and low beam, then you have the turn indicators, and this is the horn here. Now the fuel filler cap is also very well finished with the Triumph logo, and it is a hinged type, and it works beautifully well. Again, high quality. So this is about the switchgear and the instrument console. Now the ground clearance here is 158 mm, which is one of the lowest in the segment, but I did not face any problems even over bad surfaces. Talking about bad surfaces, a lot of people would want to know whether you can saddle this motorcycle, and the fact that this motorcycle has a very slim tank and the foot pegs are ideally positioned, you actually can saddle it. You can ride on the pegs. So if you're going over bad surfaces, you actually can saddle it, And for those of you who want to know whether you can take it to the Himalayas, well, the ground clearance is not ideal. It's not an adventure motorcycle. If you want to use a motorcycle for those purposes, I would suggest that you wait for some time and wait for the Scrambler, because that has better ground clearance. But it does have the capability to handle some bad roads, bad surfaces, and it's not entirely unsuitable for riding off the road as well. Now, the front seat is very usable. It's very comfortable. You can ride it for long distances easily, should not be a problem. The back seat is not very long, and while the grab rail is very usable, it's not very stylish. So the back seat can be used for short to medium journeys, but this is not a seat which is meant for long journeys. Swinging a leg is not a problem. For the shorter riders also, it should not be a problem, because the front seat is only 790 mm, and at the rear also you just have a step seat slightly higher, not too much of a height as compared to the front. So the back seat also is usable, but only for short to medium journeys. Now, talking again about the details, the quality of the brake lever, the quality of these materials like this heel guard, the engine casing itself, this TR series 400cc marking, the entire exhaust unit, all of this has been very beautifully done. And as I saw on the Harley 440X, which I rode recently, the finish on that motorcycle was not all that good. In fact, if you compare the wiring also with the Harley, the wiring here is so much more neatly done. Everything is properly tucked in. It doesn't feel like a bouquet of cables coming out from the instrument console. So it does look like a very neatly done, very beautifully set up motorcycle, which doesn't have any rough edges. It does feel like a properly international product, which is expensive, and the pricing really does baffle me. Now let's have a look at the headlamp as well. And these two lights in the middle that you see are pilots. On top you have the low beam, the lower portion is the high beam, and this is how it works. I'll turn it on and show you as well. And you have this DRL here along with this Triumph logo in the middle. So this is the DRL, these are the pilot lamps, and this is the low beam and this is the high beam. Let's have a look at it when the engine is turned on. So this is the high beam, this is the low beam, and in case you just want the pilots, that's how you turn the pilot lamp on. Similarly, you have a very neatly designed tail lamp as well, and let's have a look at that as well. And now let's have a look at how the exhaust of this motorcycle sounds. It's got a nice beat to it, but it's not as bassy as, say, a Royal Enfield Classic 350 or even the Harley. But it's got a nice beat to it. It's slightly more revvy, and it's got a decent bass. Have a look and let me know what you think. As this is a revvier engine, it doesn't feel as throaty, as bassy, as heavy as some of the other motorcycles, but it has a nice beat to it and you'd really like it if you're not totally into a slow revving kind of a thump for an exhaust. Now, a lot of people have asked as to whether this engine is shared with the Dominar or the KTM RC390. Well, the simple answer is no. The bore size is similar because Bajaj already have some critical data about the swirl, the tumble and the combustion about that bore size. So they already had a lot of data to play with, and that's the reason why they chose that bore size. But it's not the same block. This engine has been built from the ground up. It just gave Triumph and Bajaj some data to play with, but this engine is completely new and is superior in terms of how it performs. Now, before I wrap up, I want to bring to your notice some interesting facts about this motorcycle, which you would want to know, and I'll also tell you some things that this motorcycle is missing. So to start off, the service interval is about 16,000 kilometers, which is one of the longest in this class. So in that sense, Triumph have tried to replicate the long service intervals which they have for their bigger capacity motorcycles. So that's a fantastic thing. And in terms of the quality of equipment, like the filter is a cylindrical unit which has more surface area and it lasts for longer. So all of those things have been taken care of to make sure that the service interval is longer. Triumph claims that these tires have a lifespan of about 18 to 20,000 kilometers, which is much better than the Metzeler's and the Pirellis which you have on the international version. Another question that a lot of you may have is that whether Triumph has enough number of touch points to service this motorcycle. By the year end, they'll have about 100 touch points, and by the year end, I mean the financial year. That means by March 2024. Now, Triumph is positioning this as a lifestyle product, and Triumph is one of the bike manufacturers who have been able to incorporate lifestyle, accessories and merchandise with their products very, very well. And this one is not going to be any different. This will come with more than 25 accessories which you can choose from. So the whole bunch of accessories that you have for these kind of motorcycles, you can choose from them, including an option of heated grips for this motorcycle. So you'll have a whole variety of accessories to choose from. Now, all of those were mostly the good bits, but there are things which are missing also. And while the pricing is very good, 2.23 lakh rupees for the initial 10,000 customers, and 10,000 bookings have been achieved by this motorcycle, and later it will be 2.33 lakhs. But it's not that we have not seen this kind of equipment on other motorcycles as well. If you look at the TVS Apache RR 310, there also you have a lot of equipment. In fact, the Apache 200 RTR also has a lot of equipment. So in that sense, I just want to point out a few things which this bike is missing, because yes, it's a fantastic brand, it's offering a lot of value, but there are some things which could have been a little bit better. So for example, the levers could have been adjustable. I wouldn't have minded having adjustability to the front suspension as well. While ride by wire is there, there is traction control, but there are no riding modes, so that also would have added more value to me personally. So those are a few things that I would have appreciated. But having said that, I think it's great value for money, and I was genuinely expecting this motorcycle to be priced between 2.75 to 2.9 lakh rupees minimum, and in that sense it's fantastic value for money. Now Bajaj and Triumph are also claiming that the service cost of this motorcycle for the 3 years, first 3 years at least, is going to be less than Royal Enfield's Classic 350. So that's quite a claim to make, and if you're okay with paying whatever you have to pay for the Royal Enfield Classic, Triumph claims that this would be the same amount or less. So they're claiming that it's going to be very, very affordable from a service perspective as well. It comes with a 3 years warranty, and that, I think, wraps up everything that you probably wanted to know about this motorcycle in one video. The most comprehensive video, I would like to think. And if you like such videos where we do a no-nonsense, very detailed analysis of motorcycles and cars, do hit the like button, subscribe to Motoroids, and until next time, this is your friend Amit Changani signing off. Rev hard, rev free, and ride safe.